Welcome to the Family History Show. Today we are talking all things life and career of Audrey Hepburn, reviewing episode 2 of A House Through Time, and talking all things home front. So stay tuned. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Family History Show by Findmypast. If you are new around here, my name is Liam from the social media team here at Findmypast, and as always, I am joined by my colleague Ellie, also from the social media team at Findmypast. Ellie, how are you doing today?
I'm okay, yeah. Colleague and co-host of the Family History Show.
Colin
Just want to
co-host.
put that out there. Yeah, let's not play that down. This is our baby
It is.
now. I'm not impressed that it's already going dark because if you do not live in the UK, the clocks have gone back, so it's quite dark in the evenings at the moment, which is I don't really like it. I'm a summer girl. I like my long days.
Yeah, and it is somehow the 1st of November, so like you say, it's not far away from being pitch dark at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I can see still a little bit of daylight here, but yeah, it is. It's getting to that time of year, as you say, where the clocks go back, the weather takes a turn. It's cold and raining in Dundee at the moment, and yeah,
But we have family history to keep us warm.
it
Do we
is,
not?
as Jen said last week, it is research season. It is the prime weather for research and staying inside, cup of tea, fire on, heating on, computer on, and get cracking. And I can see everyone in the comments is much and such the same weather-wise as well. We've got Daphne from Dull Somerset, Andrew from Chilly Stoke, Dull in Preston with Jean. It's dull in Enfield with Karen. It's gloomy in Devon with Jeff. Very dull Somerset and David. We're getting all of the adjectives for the weather today, and everyone you can
It's
see
also
from Ellie's background, it's the same.
it's the same in North Wales as well. It's a bit, yeah, gloomy is a good word for it.
Yeah, gloomy's not a word I would use too often, but I like gloomy. It's perfect for a day like today, I think, when it's just a bit dull and not very nice overall, shall we say. But as you say, we have got family history to keep us warm, and we have got an action-packed show for you today. As always, I have masterfully, if I say so myself, merged the two main themes of today's show into one title. We are talking about Audrey Hepburn, and we are talking about A House Through Time. So the show is called Audrey Hepburn Through Time. Don't think I'll ever get as good as when we did Gemma Collins' Who Do You Think You Are? And I called it The Only Way Is Genealogy. That was a career highlight of mine, but we're getting there. We're
You
getting
can
there.
tell you work in marketing.
Yeah, see, I'm a wordsmith. I'm a wordsmith. So Audrey Hepburn Through Time, as a spoil for you there, that does mean we are looking at the life and career of Audrey Hepburn. More life, I should say, with some surprising record sets that helped trace the history of Audrey. We have got a review of the second episode of A House Through Time Series 5. We did the first one 2 weeks ago, and the second one, I was going to say the second one's out, but it's all available on demand already, isn't it? So it's been a struggle to not just binge it as I'd be used to doing, because I know if I watched all, was it 5 episodes, 5 or 6 episodes, if I watched them all 2 weeks
I think
ago,
there's four.
four, even better. If I
There's
watched
normally
all
four.
four 2 weeks ago, I'd have no clue what happened in episode 2 by the time today came around. So I've been staggering them, watching them
I
once a week.
agree. I
We
mean,
are
don't get me
all,
wrong, they're very good, but my things just fall out of my brain very quickly. So
yeah.
like you, I watched it with a cup of tea last night, and that was that.
Yeah, it was the same when we were doing Who Do You Think You Are? And because we were on every 2 weeks and then we had a few specials in between, we were like 3, 4 weeks behind at one point, and I couldn't even remember who the celebrity was at that point or what was said in it. So yeah, staggering my watching of that. We are going to do a recap of our No Story Left Behind challenge as well. And of course, we've got a question of the week, which is, what did your relatives do on the home front? Last week or 2 weeks ago, we heard a lot about the sort of military career side of things, but we're going a little bit closer to home and seeing what life is like on the home front. But as I said, before we get into the meat and bones of the episode, a little reminder about our Remembrance Challenge for you all. Ellie, as I credited her 2 weeks ago, masterfully crafted this quest around these 5 Barry brothers, the Griffith family from Barry in Wales, all of whom served in World War One. And with the various free weekends that Findmypast have been running over the past few weeks, we are using the record sets that are free each week to find out more about the life and the careers, the tragedies, the triumphs, everything going on in the lives of the Griffith brothers. And this week we are diving into the 1939 register. That is what is free this weekend. So whether you are taking part in the quest with us here and helping us answer those questions on screen there, or just diving into your own family history, that is a 1939 register is entirely free this weekend. You'll just need a registered account to access that. And as I say, you can jump into these questions as a jumping off point. We've got a post on our Facebook page, which Ellie has popped in the comments there. It is also pinned on our profile as well. So you can jump to that, answer the questions, use the 1939 register, and be in with a chance of winning a subscription as well, which who's going to say no to an all sing it, all dance and 12-month Findmypast subscription, what everybody wants to hear. And for my friends on the Findmypast Family History Forum, we've got 2 bonus questions for you there as well. So jump over to the Findmypast Family History Forum and answer the bonus questions as well. But yeah, the 1939 register is free this weekend, a very exciting one. Ellie, I know that is close to your heart. It is quite instrumental in your Findmypast career, the 1939 register, isn't it?
Do you know what? I remembered this just earlier today, and then I forgot about it again. And then you've literally just reminded me about it, because I started at Findmypast just as the 1939 register came onto the website, which was, I think, November 2015. And I started as a temp in the customer support team. And I was doing all the emails at the time, responding to some of those. And I had a day and a half training, something like that. And yeah, I was I think we had about 12 temps in at the time because we were quite busy. Yeah, that's how I started. So yeah, it is very close to my heart, actually.
I know, I just remembered that there as well. I think you spoke about it before. And yeah, 2015. That's hard to think, isn't it? 2015.
Yeah, an age away now.
I know, even I've been here 6 years as of 2 weeks ago as well, that's hard enough to think about. But 2015 wasn't even done in Dundee in 2015. But yeah, the 1939 register, as Ellie says, it was released in November 2015. And we've got a little bit about the 1939 register if you maybe haven't used it before, or you're newer to the hobby and maybe aren't entirely sure what it is, because I'm sure for Ellie and myself, the 1939 register is ingrained in our minds as to what that is. But because it isn't called the 1939 census or anything like that, it might not be entirely familiar, as I say, if you're newer to the hobby. So a little bit of background as to what the 1939 register actually is. And I kind of given a bit of a clue there with the use of the word census, because it is very purpose not to call it a census. I know it is not a census, but very similar to a census in terms of family history information and what you can expect to find. It is much like a census. It's a survey of the civilian population of England and Wales. Important to note that ours is the England and Wales version. There are different versions for Scotland and Northern Ireland, I believe, as well. They've got their own ones. So we'll go over to National Records of Scotland and Peroni, as I like to call them, for Northern Ireland for the Northern Irish version. It was taken on the 29th of September 1939. As it says there, the last census was 1931, so we needed updated population figures for things like conscription, ID cards, rationing, everything that was going on. Obviously, September 1939, right at the outbreak of World War II, and it includes 45 million people, which is incredible to think, really. That's a lot of people in one record set, a lot of names, a lot of households, a lot of families in there as well.
Yeah, I think it's often, as you say, you see something like 1939 register, and you might, if you don't know much more about it, you might just discount it. I don't think the name really reflects how important a resource it is. It's
Mm-hmm.
the only snapshot of the civilian population of England and Wales that we have for World War II. And although it's civilians only, so you won't get your enlisted relatives on there, it can still tell you so much. It's I think it's underrated. I think it's criminally underrated, actually. And I'll let you cover the what it includes, and then I'm going to go with the remember bit. So let's split it up that way.
Split it up left and right. So, speed run, the what it includes, as I say, you will recognize a lot of this from your sentences that I'm sure you have used in the past, but it goes a little bit deeper as well. You'll get names, you'll get full dates of birth, so not just ages at the time like you would on a census, a full date of birth, which is incredibly useful. It's one of the few record sets off the top of my head which would hold that information, I think. You will get a much similar to the census, the gender of the person, address. It's another important one for house history, as we will touch upon in a few slides, a lot of slides time. You'll get occupations, you'll get marital statuses, civilian roles, as we are talking about the Home Guard this week, the Home Front, I should say, this week as well, special interest groups, and the role of the institution. It does cover a lot of institutions there as well, as you can kind of see alluded to in the middle picture there. But over to you, Ellie, for the remember section.
And just to say, I really cannot understate the importance of the civilian roles and the special interest groups sections, that you can search for both of these on the 1939 register search page on the advanced search. So civilian roles, we're talking auxiliary fire service, air raid precaution wardens, civil air guard. The list really goes on and on. And if you've got, I say, half an hour to while away through an afternoon, you're never going to do this in half an hour. It's going to be the rest of your day. Go onto the 1939 register, add in one of these civilian roles, and just have a look and see who was already an air raid warden in September 1939, just as the war started. I find it utterly fascinating. By the same token, the special interest groups, I've put the little picture to the special interest groups there, and it's so small that I can't see it because my screen's so far away from me. But you're talking like if you've got early evacuees, those would have been there, and those would have been recorded there. Any refugees that have already come over, those will be recorded there. I find it really, really interesting. And then in terms of things to remember with 1939, so anyone who is under 100 and may still be alive, we have to redact their record because, as Liam has already said, these records contain full dates of birth. So that's very sensitive information. And if that person could still be alive, we have to redact that by law. But you can apply to have records opened. So if you know that, hey, that's my relative, they're in this household, I can see where they are, they're redacted, but I know that they've passed away, you can apply to us to have that opened. If you know somebody who should have been in England and Wales at this time, you cannot find them, you don't know where they would have been, you can go to the National Archives and apply. I say go to the National Archives, you can do this online. You can apply for a search of the closed records. So you don't need to know where they were living for that. And it's a paid service that the National Archives provide. It's well worth it, though, because if you don't know where they are, for example, if they were an evacuee, this is going to be really handy for you. You do need a copy of their death certificate, Jean, yes. We have to have proof that the person has died in order to open the record.
Just want to jump in quickly as well on the topic of the National Archives. Matthew's just joined us from the National Archives, funnily enough. He's just left the National Archives. And just a reminder, we do have a question of the week. It is, what were your ancestors doing on the home front, Matthew? But thank you very much for joining us. An action-packed family history day for you.
Absolutely. Oh, just throw up Rosie's as well, because that's a very important question.
I've lost her. There she goes.
There we go. So when is the next 1939 register update? So we normally do these quarterly, so 4 times a year. And I think, I want to say there's one coming in at least in the next few weeks. For some reason, I have that in my head. So there is another one coming. And basically, when people pass 100 years old, every sort of 3 or 4 months or so, we will open those. So hopefully, fingers crossed, this will be the one that you're looking for and it will be open. I really, really hope so. You'll have to let me know. Yeah, so the 1931 census was unfortunately destroyed in a fire, so that's totally gone. The 1941 census wasn't taken because of the war. So this is what I mean when I say this is our only snapshot of the population during the war. So it's a really, really vital document, in my opinion. Liam's already mentioned, if you want someone who lived in Scotland, you go to the National Records of Scotland. For Northern Ireland, you need to apply to PRONI. And the Channel Islands and the Isle of Man are not included. One other thing I just want to mention, one little quirk of the 1939 register, and you will probably have realised this if you have ever tried to search for the register by an address, not by a person. You will notice that unlike normal censuses, the addresses are by street, district and county. So your town or your village doesn't really come into it, which can make finding more rural villages, hamlets, quite tricky. Not impossible, but tricky. Just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and of course there's changes in those districts and counties over time as well, just to throw a further spanner in the works. But don't let us put us off. As I mentioned earlier, it is a great resource for house history, especially, as well as family history, as well as I say, we are going to touch upon later in the session as well. And to further illustrate how good and useful the 1939 register is, we are going to have a whistle-stop tour of Ellie's family tree, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought I'd pull these because I learned something different from each of these. And actually one of them I only looked at properly, I want to say 2 weeks ago. And I was ashamed of myself, but I've learned something new. So these are mentions of my family in the 1939 register. So at the top, you've got my overthrows. And what I liked here is that, you know, you've got my great-grandparents. But what I didn't notice until 2 weeks ago was that they both had a civilian role, which I just love. So not only was my great-grandfather at this point a sort of like a heavy worker for Cadbury in Stafford, but in his spare time, he was in the auxiliary fire service. And then my great-grandmother was an ARP warden. And I just love this. When I was at university, I think I've told you guys about this before, I worked at a place called Henley Fort in Guildford. And I used to dress up as an ARP warden and show kids around and like show them what it was like on the home front. It was a very sort of immersive history styled school trip for them. So to see this was really, really special for me. Then you've got my Dobbses in Rill. Then you've got my Davies family in Abergele. And then you've also got my Smiths in Abergele as well. Yeah, I just love this. It's probably one of my favorite record sets, actually. And I do think it's underrated.
Yeah. Another thing that I think we maybe missed to mention whilst we're on this page as well is the change in names as well. So the 1939 register was maintained up to 1991, I want to say.
That's right.
By the NHS. So you will see things like this little score out here, like these little columns in the left-hand side as well. So these are probably most common. You'll see them for women who have been married since the 1939 register was taken. So they have a change in surname. You can see Mary E. Dobbs is now Mary E. Jones. So that just implies that she has married and changed her name to Jones, or of course could have gone, you may see divorced and changed her name back or something. You might see in the left-hand column dates of death or little notes in there as well. So always keep an eye on the original images. Keep an eye out for mostly colored ink, blue, green, red ink on the page as well. And you'll get nice little annotations to say any updates since it was taken.
Typically as well, those changes of name will come with a date attached to them. So that's really handy if you're then trying to track down a marriage. And unfortunately, it's not there for my nana, Mary E. Dobbs, when she marries Jones. It's just got the change of name and then the initial M. But that's okay. Typically, you will see a date.
Would that be one there, 10-6-47?
That's right. I'm uncertain whether that's the date of marriage or whether that's the date the note was taken. If somebody does know, I would love to hear from you.
That's a good shout. Yeah, I never thought of that as being maybe, like you say, the date the note was changed rather than the date of the marriage. So yeah, I would love to know that as well if anyone does know the answer to that. But yeah, and even just looking at the handwriting of these 4 images and how different they all are as well, I would love for them all to be as clear as this third one here. I think that is some of the clearest handwriting I've ever seen. I'm sure the people doing our transcriptions and our data team wish they were all as clear as that as well, but unfortunately you will see ones more similar and worse than the top as well, where they are like this one here, scrunched up much more like my handwriting. So I can't be too judgmental because my handwriting would be nearer the top one than the third one as well. So yeah.
Actually, that the third image down where you've got the closed record, that's my granny.
Oh, nice. My granddad was closed as well. Actually, I found him in Hastings, and he's one of him and his brother are 2 of the closed records. But his parents, my great grandparents, are there. So very similar one there. Good stuff. We've got a few notes on the notes. Both Leslie and Jan both saying that it's approximate date it was changed, and Jan confirm it seems to be the date of the change very often as well, as we're saying. And as a few people mentioned earlier about the dates of birth, as well as all family historians know, take everything with a pinch of salt. The dates of birth, just because they're there and this is quite an official looking document, might not be entirely accurate. And as Jan says here as well, most of the time it's going to be the date it was changed, but you never know, it might be date of marriage depending on who was doing the notes.
Absolutely.
So what else have we got here? We've got another segment from Ellie on some fantastic work you've been doing with the community as well.
Yeah, this was just a really quick one. It doesn't really fall into what we're supposed to be talking about today, but I thought it was worth mentioning. So you'll see that we've been asking you guys to share the stories of the heroes from your family tree who maybe fought in war or maybe are on the home front, etc. I love hearing these stories, and I thought what would be really nice if we had somewhere to collate these. So any ones that you guys have been sharing, I've been going into the newspapers and I've been trying to find either the exact article that you've shared or hopefully find something new to add to your story. I haven't been able to find everything because obviously not everything would have been in the newspapers, but I have very much enjoyed trying to find some of these for you guys. But they're in this public collection. It's free to view. You don't need I don't think you even need to be logged into an account or anything. But I just thought it would be nice to have somewhere to remember these people. And if you click into each one, you'll see a little bit more about the community member who submitted it. If anybody would like me to search for anybody else and add them into this, please feel free to add it into the comments and I will take a look next week, maybe.
Yeah, I know it's been really cool to see this come together from the initial comments on social media to having this community collection. And yeah, like you say, just a place to remember all these people as well who maybe don't exist in any other collections. And newspapers is obviously such a good resource for that. So there's some good variety of articles as well.
I need to add in my great-grandfather's younger brother, because I literally just over my lunch break today found a mention of the newspapers of when he was reported missing in 1942. He didn't come home, so I think he was presumed dead after that, but I just found a newspaper article on that, so I need to add that in for me.
I'll send you one from my family tree as well, so we can be part of the community as well.
We are part of the community.
We are indeed. I had a feeling there was meant to be a question of the week coming next, but we're jumping forward because I totally forgot which order the slides are in. But we are going to talk about this lady here, who I'm sure you all recognize as Audrey Hepburn. But was her name always Audrey Hepburn? Let's have a look and see what some surprising family history records have uncovered about the life of Audrey Hepburn. And I'm giving a shout out to, I'm assuming it was Ellie that made this graphic, or was this one of Daisy's? It was you.
Sorry, I was muted because I was drinking and I didn't want to hear you guys hear me gulp. Yes, I believe I did make it.
That was you. Shout out to you. Lovely graphic. Great choice of images there as well. Some different ones as well. I'm so used to seeing the Breakfast at Tiffany's image that seeing different pictures of Audrey Hepburn feels strange sometimes because you associate her with that one picture.
These are all from our newspapers.
Oh, even better. See, you never know what you're going to find in the newspapers. Good stuff. So, as I say, was her name always Audrey Hepburn? And first slide gives it away. No, it was not. This is Audrey Hepburn's birth record. This is from the GRO consulate birth. It was meant to have it at the bottom, but I forgot to add in consulate birth indices. Is that correct? I believe so. So you can see that she is Audrey K. Ruston, born in Brussels. There, and as I say, her name was not always Audrey Hepburn. Her name was Audrey Ruston at birth, which is part of the mystery that was solved as part of this research. But you may be wondering where Hepburn came from or why it was changed at some point, because it isn't even her mother's name. It's not like it was a double-barreled name with the mother's maiden name, as you would maybe assume there. It comes relating to this man here, who is James Hepburn, the Earl of Bothwell. And would like to tell us a little bit about James Hepburn, Earl of... Can't even get my words out. That's why I'm trying to pass over to you. Earl of Bothwell, Ellie.
He's probably most famous for being the third husband of Mary, Queen of Scots, I would say. That's pretty much all I know about him, to be fair.
That was going to... I pass over to you because I felt like that was your area of expertise, I thought.
I mean, I don't think he was particularly nice.
No.
Yeah, so obviously Mary Queen, I think he actually was one of the people that arranged for the murder of her second husband, Henry Stuart Lord Darnley, I believe. And then she married him afterwards. I think they might have had one child or maybe even twins, but they died in infancy, I seem to remember. Don't quote me on this. This is all from memory. And if Liam had asked me 10 minutes ago to prep this beforehand, I would have given you a better answer.
I just like putting people on the spot. It's more fun that way.
I'm not very good at this.
Me neither. That's why I passed on to you. I thought I was passing on to you as the expert. But yeah, James Hepburn. So Audrey's father was Joseph Hepburn. He was a British subject born in what would now be Czech Republic, but at the time was Austria-Hungary, I think it was. That part of the world and the changes in borders goes entirely over my head. But her father, Joseph Hepburn, turns out mistakenly thought that he was related to this guy, James Hepburn, which has been disproved. I think there's been books written about it and everything disproving that he was related to this man. But he thought he was related to this man, and he was worried about the sort of implications about being part of a noble family, I think it was.
I think he wanted
to be, yeah. He wanted to be, especially because Audrey Hepburn's mother, whose name I have written down, I'm going to try and pronounce, apologies in advance, Baroness Ella von Heemstra, was a Dutch noblewoman. She came from quite high up Dutch stock. Her father was Arnoud van Heemstra. He was former mayor of a region of the Netherlands as well. So I think maybe with that side of things as well, there was maybe a bit of jealousy there that the wife was a Dutch noblewoman and came from stock, but he, as I say, turns out mistakenly thought he was related to James Hepburn. It has since been disproved anyway. But leading on, jumping forward many, many, many years from James Hepburn there to the 1939 register that we were just talking about. As I said, it is free this week, so it's a 1939 heavy session. We've got some more to show as well. But this household there is for Orchard Villa, which is in Elm. And you can see that the head of the house is Edward Butcher with his wife and daughter. And there is a closed record there. So as Ellie touched upon at the beginning of the session, because there is so much information about people on these records in terms of full dates of birth, maiden names, changes in names, particularly for women, as we've discussed as well. Anyone born less than 100 years ago is officially closed. So like you saw on Ellie's family's record with her grand being closed, there was a closed record on this household. However, through some expert research, have to give a massive, massive shout out to two people here, Georgia Sturge, statistician at the House of Commons Library, and David Annell, also known as Lifeline Research on social media as well. We'll also give him a massive shout out in particular. His comes up on my feed quite a lot, Lifeline Research, a lot of really good family history threads on there as well. So give him a follow if you are interested in there and you're on places like X, formerly Twitter, as I'm still calling it. So give it a shout out there. And Dave in particular got in touch with ourselves on social media with a little bit of a teaser saying that him and Georgia had been having a look. They know that Audrey was in a school in this area. She was in a private school at the time. 2 private schools I think she went to in and around this area, and they had an inkling that behind that black line of doom, as we used to call it in our customer support days, is one Audrey Hepburn. That's who they thought was there. And as Ellie said, you can apply for records of the 1939 register to be opened. So they got in touch with ourselves on social media with the necessary evidence, with their thinkings behind that. Me and Ellie took it to the team. We had a little word with the team, got them to look behind the line of doom, see who was there, and lo and behold, there was an Audrey K. Hepburn Rustin, born 4th of May 1929, and you can see she is at school, as I say, in the Elm area. She was attending a private school at the time, and you can see that, as I say, she is with the Butcher family, not her own family. I was reading online earlier that she felt she was dumped by her parents, essentially, on these. I think her parents had divorced at the time, and she was kind of left to her own devices with this Butcher family at this private school. But it was indeed Audrey Hepburn Rustin, or Audrey Hepburn, as we would know her by, behind the line. And yeah, I think it was a very exciting one for us to get through on social and see through the whole process as well.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating when Dave came to us and put this research to us, and we got quite excited.
Yeah, and I remember telling.
I was so pleased they were right.
I know when it first came in on social, I was like, Audrey Hepburn is in Elm in 1939. That's because you hear there's obviously the stories about her kind of taking part in the Dutch resistance and everything like that, which I know a lot of people bring up in the comments whenever we speak about this as well. So it was quite unusual, I thought, to find her there. And I remember, like I say, we were excited. We told Maddie, who has been on here before from the PR team here, she was especially excited. I think Jen was excited. Everyone was quite excited about this. It felt like a big thing to find. And yeah, again, massive shout out to Dave and Georgia for the research behind this, because yeah, it was really, really cool, I think. And it's kind of added a new leg to the story of her time in World War II, because as I say, I think that's also been disproven that she took part in the Dutch resistance, but I think she was kind of involved in fundraising as a teenager, I suppose. She'd have been a young teenager at the time, in terms of she was doing dances and performances to raise money for the Dutch resistance. I think some of her family were involved as well. Yeah, I've literally read it this afternoon and it's gone out of my head because I'm still thinking about the Hepburns and Joseph Hepburn and Mary Queen of Scots. That's totally thrown me. But yeah, it's, as I say, so shortly after this, according to Wikipedia, that well-known reliable source, her family moved back to the Netherlands in September 1939, which this probably disproves, because this was, what did you say, the 29th of September?
Yeah.
So unless she did it the day after this was taken, seems unlikely that she moved back. But as I say, it was a really cool find, and one that me and you both saw kind of from start to finish as well. So it was a particularly special one for us.
Yeah. It goes back to this snapshot thing that censuses and this register really are. You know, this is one night, one moment in time where we can pinpoint Audrey Hepburn. We know exactly where she was, who she was in a household with, and I don't know. I think there's something quite special about that.
Yeah, like I say, I think that snapshot is the perfect way to describe this and the censuses. You never know where someone's going to be on that one night, like if it's in their house, at a friend's house, in a hotel, 100 miles away, not even in the country, in a totally different country census, as the case might be. Yeah, it's just, you never know what you're going to find with these censuses.
No.
And when I was recapping myself on this record as well, I thought I'd have a look and see, are there other family history records that Audrey Hepburn appears in? And unsurprisingly, she was all over the passenger list. There was quite a few passenger lists of her. This was her later in life, so she was kind of already an actress. And there were some cool things I thought there. The first one being a new record set for me, actually. I don't think I've used that before. The Board of Trade, Commercial and Statistical Department and Successors Outward Passenger Lists. Bit of a mouthful, but I thought it was cool there seeing her occupation as actress in the right-hand column there. And the other one was one I have used before for my own family research, funnily enough, is the New York City passenger list. And one thing I thought was interesting about this, that 8 that you see in the right-hand column is actually how many pieces of luggage she had with her. And she was traveling alone, and she had 8 bags with her. If you can imagine, probably quite sizable luggage back in the day as well. I'm picturing the Louis Vuitton chests with the buckles on them and everything.
That's what I'm picturing as well. But imagine this, though. You are a reasonably famous actress, and you're going from Britain to New York, probably for an extended period of time. You're gonna need quite a lot of luggage, right? It's not like she's going for like a city break over the weekend.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, to be fair, these days I struggle with the various airlines baggage constraints going for a city break. So if I had the opportunity to take 8 bags everywhere I went with me, I'd jump at the chance. And you're Audrey Hepburn. You can do what you like, really.
As long as I didn't have to pay per bag. I really hate doing that. I'm one of these people that goes on one of these, these like budget airlines, and when they try and get you to pay extra for bags, I'm like, no, I will take my hand luggage bag, and I have one of these. It's a really good hand luggage bag. You can fit so much into it, and it fits into the size really well. I will just take that. I'm such a cheapskate. I won't pay for any extra bags.
It is one of those things that it doesn't feel right paying for it, like paying for the extra ones, especially these days when they're trying to get you to pay to sit next to the person that you're traveling with and everything like that as well, which just seems
that doesn't bother me.
Ridiculous. Me and my girlfriend are both in agreement that it's not worth paying the $10 or whatever it is to there. When flights are so cheap now as well, you pay like £15 for a flight, and then by the time you get your baggage, your seat there, it ruins the buzz of getting a cheap flight, I think. So, but as I say, back in the day, back in the 50s, I think this one was from, Audrey is well entitled to take 8 probably quite sizable pieces of luggage with her as well.
We're with you, Audrey.
Yeah, you're amongst friends.
You are amongst friends.
As Andrew says, cruise from the UK, no restrictions. I guess that's true. It wasn't Ryanair that she was traveling with or anything like that. She wasn't having to pay per bag or anything there. There was no weight limits or anything like that, I can imagine.
Yeah. Anyway, we could spiral off on modern travel. Let's not.
We're running out of time. We're running out of time here. Let's not talk about booking seats and what size your bag should be to go on holiday over Christmas. We're on to the question of the week. We're on to, what did your relatives do on the home front? As I said, we've done similar questions in the past few weeks about the more kind of military side of things. But as we touched upon in the 1939 register, there were so many civilian roles available at the home front as well. And things like the 1939 register, like the land girl records, whatever it might be, there's so much out there to find out what your ancestors did in this time period as well, without necessarily being on the front line. So we want to hear from you and see what your ancestors did. And I start to feel what it feels like when some of our colleagues are hosting company-wide meetings and everyone in the chat is going on a tangent, because I'm getting so distracted and I keep wanting to talk about things. Like Daphne's talking about window seats now, and I just keep getting distracted, and I like, let's just talk about traveling instead. That's more fun. But we're staying on topic. We're going to the home front, and we'll read a few of the
what
comments.
You just said about the land girls, you can actually find some early land girls on the 1939 register. You can search by civilian role for Women's Land Army, and you can see some of the early land girls. This is 1939. That's pretty cool.
That is cool. I think that's especially, like you said earlier as well, because it's such an early, like in the context of the war, it's very, very early. So seeing those first air raid wardens, those first land girls, whatever it might be, is particularly cool as well. And if you have found them, obviously let us know in the question of the week. Let us know if there's records for them as well, how you discovered them as well. That would be cool to see. But we've got some here, so I'll run through some. Feel free to jump in whenever you are ready, but we will start from the top, as is only fair. Karen is always quick off the mark as well. So one of her grandfathers was a fireman, and the other one was an ARP warden at work as well. So 2 in the family. Very cool to hear. Who else do we have? We've got Andrew. My mum's widowed mum worked nights at ROF Euxton. Mum and her sister would meet her in a Bolton cafe for breakfast before heading to school. I was going to say it's a nice memory. It's obviously would have been difficult for them at the time there, but I like the idea of meeting your mum for breakfast in a cafe before popping off to school after that. That's work.
Quite sweet.
It's a nice memory as well, I think that's quite a sweet story as well. Who else do we have?
I do want to clarify as well, when we say home front, we don't just mean like the official civilian roles. Like in my family, I have got an ARP warden and someone in the auxiliary fire service, but I also know that most of them were farmers and miners, and that's how they kept the home fires burning. So I would say they are pretty much on the home front too. So if you've got any of those, we want to hear them too. We want to hear everybody.
And a fantastic segue into the one I've put on screen as well, because Gillian, some of her ancestors were farm labourers putting food on the table for the country, also miners and railway workers as well. So yeah, exactly as she said as well, it doesn't have to be that official letters after your name on the 1939 register to clarify what you did. Anything people were doing, whether like say it was farms, mining, factories, whatever it might be, everyone played their part and everyone's got a story as well. It'd be cool to hear. Who else do we have? I won't be cruel and make you read out the long one. I'll take that one there before you can jump in and pick some of your favourites as well. As always, I'm chopped off here. But Jean's paternal grandmother worked on Burtonwood, USA base as a cook. Her husband worked as an aluminium roller at the local alley Warrington. My granddad, maternal, was on a farm near the base and had to leave there. He was originally a farm owner, but in 1939, he's down as a horse driver. But I know that my gran also down as domestic duties, ran a stall in the market, feeding the people of Warrington. Maternal family were all farmers. That's another, much like what we've been saying as well. They got the official roles and the unofficial roles, if you want to call them that as well, the things that kept the country ticking over as well, the farm owners, the market stalls, whatever it might be. The market stalls is one as well that you wouldn't necessarily think of as well, how an important role that must have played for the people of Warrington at the time as well, having that to go to and get the food from the farms especially.
Yeah, and then you've got, this comes into it as well. So Nicole's saying both of my great-grandfathers were at war, but my great-grandmothers were at home, raising my grandparents by themselves. My one grandmother had 9 kids, which included my late granddad, and my other one was raising 5. So, women raising kids on their own, left at home while, worrying about their loved ones away at war. Like, I absolutely include these in the home front effort. Absolutely. No questions asked.
Yeah.
So wonderful. I'd absolutely take my hat off. I couldn't do it. Getting emotional, but yeah. Move on quickly before I cry.
Move on quickly. I'm going to just jump forward to the most recent one as well, because I like this one as well. Something, a different angle on it as well. Sue Moon, her grandfather was from Southern Ireland. He still served in the Home Guard in Dublin, which is something I never really considered the Home Guard in Dublin as well in the World War II. He'd been invalided out of the British Army in World War I, but still wanted to do his bit and died of pneumonia during the war, 11/11/1940. So that would be coming up soon as well. So I'm sure you'll be thinking of him in 10 days' time as well, and rightfully so. As I say, it's a new one for me, a new angle on it. The Home Guard in Dublin. I hadn't come across that in my research before as well. So
he sounds like quite a character. Obviously had. Came home from the First World War with pneumonia, but was still determined to do his bit. But yeah, take my hat off to him as well. Should we do a couple more and then we can move on to our final segment, can't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Excuse me, I think I've got a cough coming on. Kim says, my paternal granddad was in the ARP and his brother was a special constable in West Yorkshire. My maternal granddad was based in Brighton in the army. This is the thing, whichever family you look at, there's one person doing one thing, there's one person doing another thing. Like, it's a collective thing, right? So the only like the 1939 register I couldn't show you was from my Joneses, because I think their record's been lost, which is a shame, but it can't be helped. And so my grandfather was in, hold on, I've got his picture somewhere. I've shown you a zillion times, but I'll show you again. That's him. So he was obviously a soldier. And then I know that some of his sisters were in the RAF, I think, the Women's Royal Air Force. I want to say they were, yeah, according to my auntie, they were. So,
Nice.
yeah, it's a collective
I love that picture. Let's have a look. We'll do one more because time is rapidly getting away from us. We've spent far too long on budget airlines today, so we can only apologise. It's a whole session on its own. We'll come back to the history of budget airline travel in the UK. Ellen, the last one we'll do, as I say, her mum and siblings were in school, and I don't remember her saying much about anything they did to help, but her dad was in his 50s and worked for the Cleveland Electrical Illuminating Co., which was essential to the war effort as well. So yeah, another one, it's not an official role, it's just what he did, but like I say, still crucial to the war effort and everything that was happening at home as well. So yeah, another really important one, and I think I've learned a lot already about these, because I think I hadn't really thought about it until you said, and until all these great comments started coming in about all the sort of the other roles that maybe aren't part of the traditional home front, the air raid wardens, etc., but the miners, the farmers, the people working for the electrical company, keeping the lights on, different things like that. The people mentioned about working at the GPO, fitting phone lines, and fire watchers, and all those sort of things as well. So yeah, absolutely. So moving on, because we've only got 12 minutes left somehow. This is another one where every time I do my prep, I think, have I got enough? Am I going to end up finishing at 4:30 here? And then next thing you know, it is 10 to 5. But we will do a sort of whistle stop tour of this fantastic man's new show, A House Through Time. As I said, we spoke about the first episode 2 weeks ago. They are all available on demand. We will be doing the other two, I'm assuming, over the next 4 weeks.
Yeah, we'll try and squeeze them in. I think these are essential viewing. If you can watch these, watch them, because they're not just a little bit of house history. There's also World War II history. There's social history. There's genealogy, family history in there. So it's a lovely combination of lots of things that I think a lot of us enjoy, and it's just told so well. I think it's researched so well. It's told so well. I think it's a marvelous bit of television.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, it's such a history of the war and these two cities, as it is two cities at war, that at some points through the show you forget it's about house history at the same time. Because I'm learning so much about World War II from a different angle, that when he comes back and pulls out A Sentenced to Return for like Montague Mansions is one of the ones that's covered, I sort of remember sort of like, oh yeah, it's about the people that lived in this building, because I'm learning so much about the outbreak of the war. Obviously we're only on episode 2, so we're still kind of at that stage as well. So yeah, you're learning so much through the lens of house history, through the lens of family history as well. There's a bit of that peppered in there as well. So it is, yeah. And this episode, I think we were chatting earlier, Ellie, about the Berlin Olympics. It kicks off with 1936. Me and you were chatting, and you made the point about it being a bit of a show for an opportunity for Hitler to present Germany.
Yes, because obviously there was so much that the Nazis had done in the run up to 36, and I think Hitler wanted to portray Germany with a bit of a gloss, and the 1936 Berlin Olympics were his way of doing that. So he does put on a bit of a show, and I find I can't look at photographs from this Olympics without having a horrible chill. They actually terrify me in a way I cannot quite explain.
Yeah, and like when you made that point there, and it's discussed in the show as well about him kind of being an opportunity to kind of try and show off this new Germany. I had a look in the newspapers, and there was a disturbing amount of articles like this one, or adverts, I should say, but there were articles as well about this would be the week the Olympics started, I think, beginning of August 1936. And there's so many articles about going to Germany because your pounds go further in Germany, and there's these ski resorts, and there's this and there's that, and it's such a great place to visit. And there's articles like, oh, once you're finished with the Olympics, go to this part of Germany to do this and all this. So it's disturbing to say, like, to see, like you say, that angle from Germany, but at home as well. That so many newspapers at the time were sort of propping this up almost with these articles. And you mentioned about seeing photos from those Olympics, and they are kind of always disturbing. But I think it would be amiss if we didn't mention this particular image from the 1936 Olympics. A USA athlete, Jesse Owens, winning the long jump, I want to say. And this is one of those images, like you say, that it's powerful, but it is also disturbing at the time as well. You can see Jesse Owens, the American athlete, in the middle there with the gold medal. And in third place, the guy behind him is a German athlete, obviously doing the salute, as are the people behind him, as are probably most people in the crowd as well. You can see in the background as well. But it's one of those, probably one of, if not the most iconic sports images of all time.
I think it just reminds me of the danger of personality cults in politics. Like, that's exactly what Hitler was. Like, it was a personality cult. You know, if you look back at the first episode of A House Through Time, where the historian, so I think her name was Sophie, was looking at some of the school books that were produced under the Nazi regime, and it's terrifying to me. And how they sort of gently chip away at democracy. They'll scapegoat a certain group of people, make them, you know, I could go on about this, but I will get off my soapbox now, and we will actually talk a little bit more about the episode itself.
About the episode, absolutely. So this was so far probably the most kind of striking story for me. I think throughout all the stories on both sides have been interesting and fascinating in their own way, but I think this is one of the ones that kind of struck a chord with me most, and unfortunately I did kind of ruin it for myself because I had it on watching the show and I started looking at the records on there, and I went a little bit too far with my research before the show had got there, so I did kind of spoil this one for myself a bit, unfortunately. But I'd say it was probably the most striking story so far, so it still struck a chord, seeing obviously went into much more detail than I did, but it was the story of Claudio Silvia Foglia, who was an Italian gentleman, as you can see there. And we've got two records of him here, the 1921 census and the 1939 register. And we were saying, Ellie, how this was another one that kind of was a bit of a callback for us as well, because of where Claudio worked in 1921, 1939. You can see he is the maitre d' at a hotel, aka head waiter, and he's employed by the Savoy Hotel, which is another place close to our hearts in our Findmypast career as well.
Yeah, because we did our Findmypast Live, our Heritage Open Day event at the Savoy in 2022. Was it 2022? 21?
Must do.
I can't remember. It was one of those dates. We got to meet some of you guys there, and it was absolutely wonderful. It's one of my favorite things that we've ever done in my career to date. Like, it was absolutely fantastic. But Jen did a huge amount of research into the people living and working and staying at the Savoy on the night of the 1921 census. So immediately my ears pricked up when I was watching the episode, and I had to send her this. And then I had to send her the other things that we found as well, which we'll get onto in a second.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like you say, the Savoy. And I was surprised the name didn't ring a bell as well from the Savoy, because I know she did a lot into, there was like the barman, for example. And
yeah, obviously she only did select people. She couldn't do everybody. That would take her years.
Yeah, when you think of all the staff, all the guests, all the everyone that was involved in the hotel. But yeah, it was, as I say, there, and you can see in 1939 his occupation is hotel departmental manager, and he was an Italian-born man, as it says there as well. One thing I took away from the episode, they were saying that being Italian was kind of necessary to work at the Savoy at that time, that's kind of who they were looking for, that they were considered sort of the best hotel staff, the best waitresses, waiters, as say Claudio was as well. So I found that really interesting.
I agree.
Two. So we are going to rapidly run out of time, so we'll maybe whistle through this, unfortunately, because as I say, it is a fantastic story. Fantastic is not the right word whatsoever. It is a fascinating story, and one I would implore you all to go and watch on A House Through Time as well. But this card is from a record set which I covered many moons ago on one of these sessions. It is the Enemy, Aliens and Internees cards from the First and Second World Wars. So Claudio, being an Italian man, was one of these enemy aliens and internees there, because Italy obviously heavily involved in World War II at this point as well. So he was deemed to be a risk, I suppose, a security risk. Him and other people of Italian, German, Japanese, a lot of other countries as well were kind of lumped in with this as well, rightfully or wrongly, as the case may be. So this is one of his cards from when he was interned as an Italian, as I say, an enemy, as they have called it there, as I say, might not always be the case. And as part of that scheme, he was to be sent to Canada on a ship called the Arandora Star. And this is where my spoiler came in, because it goes from his life in kind of the 20s to a different story and then loops back. But before it had looked back, I'd already accidentally found these records by searching for his names. So unfortunately, he does then appear on the Deaths at Sea register, which is another record set I haven't had much of a chance to use, but there is so much information in there. Unfortunately, the ship, the Arandora Star, was torpedoed by a German U-boat on its way to Canada and sank. And there were many casualties. There were 1,500 people aboard. There were some survivors, but I don't think there were too many in the end. And I think one of the kind of heartbreaking things about it was his daughter, who was with him in 1921, was at home reading the newspaper articles that there were survivors, but they didn't know who they were, sort of thing. And I think it was quite a while later before they confirmed to her that he would have been one of the ones lost. And you can see the names, obviously, there. More men of Italian descent, particularly, or maybe even Italian born, as Claudio was as well. And that is his occupation, the right-hand side, or the one underneath, I should say, the head waiter. So he's still the maitre d', the head waiter. That was his last known occupation at the Savoy Hotel. What else do we have? This is the probate record of Claudio as well. You can see his daughter is named as the beneficiary there. This was from, I think it was January 1941. So it was quite a while after. You can see it says died on or about 2 July 1940 at sea, which is a first for me, I think, in these probate records. I've never seen it on or about, but because of the ship sinking, the circumstances around it, I guess, unfortunately, they couldn't say for certain when it actually happened, unfortunately.
Yeah, when I had a little look at the newspaper reports at the time when the Anadora sank, and there were some mentions of how the enemy internees that they were transporting to Canada were kept below decks, but they said that they weren't like imprisoned there. And apparently Anthony Eden at the time had inquired, like, were they trapped? And people had said no, there was no evidence of that, and he was quite happy with that. But they do actually mention it in the episode that I think they were sort of kept in by barbed wire, and that's why so many of these people died when this ship was sunk. And it changed attitudes, I think, a little bit towards the treatment of alien internees, which was something. But I just think it's a hugely avoidable tragedy, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, much like our last session, we're going to need someone to give us a pick-me-up in the comments to end this session on, because once again, we're accidentally ending on quite a sad note, because it is a sad story for Claudio. But as I said, the episode is fascinating. It's a really good episode. As I say, patiently waiting for 2 weeks to come around so I can watch episode 3, because if I watch it tonight, I'm not going to be able to remember. So
I've got something cheery for us to end on. I just need to find it in the comments. Hold on.
That's good.
I need to find it. Right. So you know how Rosie said that she was waiting for a particular 1939 register record to be opened. She went and looked, and the closed entry has been opened. It's her father.
Oh.
Why am I crying?
Well, this is meant to be a happy end, Ellie. Come on.
Happy tears.
No, that's
I'm
great.
having an emotional week, okay?
That's, yeah. And it just goes to show with the 1939 register, you never know when these things are going to be open. So if, like Rosie, you've got one that you're struggling to find, keep an eye on things. And, yeah, you never know what you're going to come across. But, yeah.
Yeah, also, can I remind everybody, I think I did mention this last time we discussed A House Through Time, but just in case I didn't mention it, if you haven't watched the documentary series, The Rise and Fall of the Nazis, there's 2 separate parts. I implore you to go and watch them. They are essential viewing, in my opinion. They're going to make you feel really uncomfortable, but you will learn so much. I really cannot recommend them enough. I think they're excellent.
That is something I'm going to go and do once I've finished this, because you mentioned that 2 weeks ago as well, and I haven't actually seen it.
I'm talking like elite level documentaries. They're so good.
And yeah, just the kind of not as in-depth stuff about that same period of time in A House Through Time at the moment have me itching for more. So yeah, I will definitely be going to do that further down the line once this is over with. See how this series ends. I might not have it in me to stomach that straight off the bat, but I will definitely come back.
You do need to break them up a little bit with fun stuff, like watch a sitcom in between.
Yeah, I'm going to need a Friends binge or something after A House Through Time to cleanse the palate before I jump back into the Nazis, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's so just to wrap up as well. So we've got 3 more questions with our No Story Left Behind challenge for you guys this weekend. It's all on the Facebook page. There's a pinned post. There's 3 brand new questions in there. There's 2 bonus questions in the forum for those of you who are like us and just cannot get enough of this stuff. So please have a go at those. We'd love to hear what you think and what you find. The 1939 register is totally free to access this weekend until, I think, end of play Monday. So if you don't have a subscription or your friends don't have a subscription, now is the time to go and look at this really, really vital and, in my opinion, criminally underrated historical resource.
Absolutely.
Am I getting off my soapbox again now?
Hopefully we have gone some way to even give you a little glimpse as to what's possible with the 1939 register in this session as well, whether it's Ellie's family with their home front roles, it's Audrey Hepburn being at school in Elm, it's what anyone's life at the outbreak of World War II. Yeah, fascinating, as it says. Criminally underrated. But we will end there because we are 4 minutes over. I think that's the latest I have ever been on our Fridays live. So apologies for keeping everyone. But I hope everyone has enjoyed today's session. I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend when it comes for you all as well. I'd like to thank you all again very much for joining. Thank you, Ellie, for co-hosting. Remember to say it this time. Co-hosting the session with me as always. A great session. Rose is back next week, or is it still Jen?
No, it should be Rose next week.
It'll be back to Rose.
She might have some nice news to share with you all. I don't really want to spoil it.
No spoilers. We'll let her do that. But make sure you're in 4 o'clock next Friday for Rose. Myself and Ellie will be back the following Friday for more family history show fun. But again, thank you all very much indeed for joining us. Have a lovely weekend and stay